Alright, this is a video regarding my 2008 Nissan Pathfinder, and it'll probably apply for Frontier, Xterra, and Armada around the same generation. I just got finished done swapping out the transfer case, and this is the transfer case with auto, but it shouldn't be that much different with the other transfer case, the one without auto. Just want to give you some tips and pointers before I finish installing it. I had to get a junkyard one because this one right here has a pretty bad leak, and it wasn't worth trying to figure out why is it leaking. So super quick on the taking out the transfer case. First thing you need to do is remove the rear drive shaft. So by removing the rear drive shaft, what you need to do is so here's the drive shaft. What you need to do is, obviously take those bolts out. Make sure you figure out which bolt goes where when you put it back, because they do have a weight on them, so they're balanced somehow at the factory. And then you kind of just pull it out, and then when you pull it out, it'll just come straight out. There's nothing else, so it will pull out from here. And then there is a little fluid, so you gotta remember to put probably a bucket underneath. And then you disconnect. Next thing you do is disconnect the front drive shaft, which is this guy, and then connects to the front. What you want to do in these both situations is you kind of want to get the car tire onto the floor in order to prevent it from turning when you're pulling on these things. And then let's see, when you need to get to the other side of the bolt, so let's say if you got this guy out, and you need to get to the top one, what you need to do is put the car in neutral. And how you would do that is by basically taking out this clip here in your driver console, and then push on it, and then you can pull this guy back to neutral, and then you can kind of like basically turn the shafts around in order to get to the other bolt on the other side. Another tip I want to give you on taking out the drive shaft. So for this guy, these bolts right here, they're on fairly tight, but obviously if you kind of just have both ends like with wrenches and stuff like that, or with a power tool or whatever you have, you should be fine. But for the front drive shaft, what I found the best thing to do, because there is limited space, is to get two wrenches together. So what you want to do is, I think they're 14 millimeters, so you would get the first one in to wherever bolt you need, right? And then you need more leverage, so you would kind of grab another wrench, not this one, but let's see. Yeah, you would grab another wrench and then kind of hook it on, and when you hook it on, you can get more leverage like that. So let me try to get an example here. So yeah, so you see how that goes. So this would be on the bolt itself. You would kind of hook on to extend the wrench, and then kind of, because the car tires on the floor, it won't turn on you, and you kind of just keep pushing it and put your weight on it, and then you should be able to get it off, no problem. Okay, with that said, the other thing you need to do to get the transmission case out is to take out the transmission support beam underneath in order for you to proceed. I can talk you through it, but it's pretty straightforward. It'll probably work easier if you had a power tool or impact wrench of some sort, because they are on pretty tight. So what I'm talking about is underneath the car there is a support beam from there to here, and what it does is it allows you to kind of drop the entire transmission and the transfer case low enough that you can get to the top bolts. Without doing that, it's really hard to get to the top bolts and dislodging them. So I would suggest you do that. Here's my front drive shaft. I kind of just, the U joints were fine, so I kind of just laid it down to the floor, and then you can kind of just leave a wooden beam there just in case it keeps shifting around or something like that. The method I went with is to not remove the exhaust piping, mostly because people said online you can wiggle it out, and I'll show you how I wiggle it out in a bit. But let me just go ahead and finish up with the transmission support beam. So what you want to do is basically you go underneath it, and so super quick, here it is. You go underneath it and you basically, it's pretty straightforward. So you take out the bolts here. For mine, it's a K support. I don't know if other Nissan models have a K support or just one long beam. So you take out the bolts here and here on top, and then next you do is take out the bolts in here, the 3 bolts in here, and that way you can kind of, and then it's held on. So, and then so as you can see, it's held on. The support is right in here. And then if you need to change it out like I do, here it is. So here's the old one, and here's the new one. Amazon sells a I forgot what is it called, but you should be able to find it. It's not OEM, but it was pretty good. A lot of good reviews, so I just bought it from Amazon, and it works fine. But anyways, so again, the 3 bolts are here. You can take out the 2 that connects to the transmission here, and then you can take out the whole transmission mount. You see how that mount is kind of tore up inside the rubber, so that's why I had to replace it. Here's the let's see if we can get a better picture of it. Yeah, here's the new one. So you see how that rubber is totally fine. Anyways, so going back, once you dislodge the 3 bolts underneath right here, which corresponds to the back there, the 3 bolts, you just have to take these guys out on the side. So again, you know, it's kind of straightforward there. And then this whole thing is wedged inside the joints of the car. So what you need to do is basically bash on this from the top downwards, and then you kind of have to, you know, obviously try to get as much grease or, you know, PB blaster or whatever you have to the things on the side. And then what you can't, so what happens is once you keep pulling on it or using a rubber mallet to try to get it down or whatever you have and bash on it, this crevice will start showing. Here, let me try the other side. This crevice will start showing downwards, right? And then you can use like a pry bar and whatever. So it'll start coming down from here, right? And you can use, and it'll start showing a little bit, and then you can just use a pry bar and just try to keep nudging on it until it gets out. It took me a while, but eventually come out. There's no really good way to get it out except by bashing on it. Once you get one side out, you can kind of like rotate it back and forth to get the other side out, which is not too bad. So once you get that done, now the main part is to take out the transmission case, transfer case, sorry, transfer case. As you can see, I got the old one in already, and I'm halfway installing it, and I want to describe to you how I kind of get it out. So the bottom bolts are easy. So here's my old one. So the bottom bolts are easy, referring to the ones down here, right? The ones on the passenger side are pretty easy. So you have ones here, and you can get to it using just a wrench or something like that. This one right here, you probably want to use a extension. So the one I've used a lot in this project is this extension right here. So it's just 2 extensions plus a you know, one of those wiggle heads, and then the 14 millimeter and just a regular 3/8, I think. No, yeah, 3/8 wrench. So again, it's easy enough to get to these guys right here. The last guy on top, I don't know if you guys can see it right here. You have to use an extension, and it kind of goes around here, and then you can kind of basically start wrenching it in, but it has to kind of go over all this stuff to get in here. Once you get this, so that's not that hard. What I would suggest is definitely to get the side ones out first. Leave this bottom one in, because you should get the top parts out before you get the bottom ones out. That way it's less stress, and you don't want anything to like stress on the bolt itself. So that's the passenger side. The driver's side is a little bit more complicated, because you have to remove a lot of other random things. Okay, so the driver's side is a little bit more complicated because you have to move a lot more random things. So here's the driver's side. So this is easy, but these two right here require you to dislocate the shift lever over here. So what you want to do for this is just, you know, get two 14 millimeter wrenches, and then opposite side you can kind of use one wrench to hold on to the inside of the shift lever and then get the nut out from the other side. And then the other thing you want to do is take off these two 12 millimeter bolts that holds on to this motor, and then that way it gives you enough room to take off this bolt and go all the way out this way, and same thing with the top one, go all the way out this way. And then you will have the driver's side kind of free. There's one last bolt before you get to the top portion, and it's one guy up here, and let me show you on the old one. So like I said, here's a shift link, and then you get that two motors out, and then you can get these two guys out. Now you just have to get this guy out, and then the very top, so you got this guy out, and then you have this guy out from the other side, like we were just previously talking about using extension. So the very top is these two. So with these two, and that's why you have to kind of take the motor, the transmission cross beam out, because you need this kind of go down about 2 inches in order for you to reach this, the two on the very top. Obviously I used straps to make sure that the transmission just doesn't fall out. So make sure you use like all safety precautions such as straps. And you know, I bought a Harbor Freight 800-pound transmission lift in order to help me with the job, which came in really handy, so I really suggest that. Mostly because the platform right there on top, you can kind of like tweak it so that it goes back in correctly. So it's more about obviously uninstalling it, but it's a lot more about installing it when you're putting it back. So anyways, going back to taking out the 2 bolts. So you know, you kind of have to play with the height of the car in order to kind of get enough room underneath so that you can comfortably uninstall it. So you kind of have to get the car as high as possible for this part, because your body is pretty far under there. All right, going back to uninstalling the transfer case. So again, I think we talked about the 2 top bolts and having to use this extension to get the bolts out after you were able to let it down about 2 inches. So you kind of unhook it there. So let me talk about the electrical loom. So the electrical loom comes from the passenger side, and it kind of crosses over here from the top and then ends up on the driver's side. There is, when you take off the passenger side here, there's a bracket, so that kind of makes it loose on this side. But when you get to the top portion, right, you can either take out the bolts here and here, because they're hooked on by these zip ties, and the bracket will come loose. Or what I did was obviously just cut the zip ties, because I just didn't know and I couldn't see it. So anyways, when it comes down to here, it's easy enough to get to unhooking this guy that was here, you know, these clips. So be careful, all the clips are different, so you kind of have to like figure them out slowly. So just, you know, work your way through it. So you can unhook this guy, and this guy. So that's 3. And then you know, there are kind of push-ins on these ones right here. So that's 3, and then this guy right here, and then you have another one on the very top up here. I didn't unhook this until I got the transmission, the transfer case down from the vehicle in order to get to this guy easily. Since you've already unhooked a lot of it already, you should have enough room to lower this and then unhook this guy. So that's how I took out the loom. And then remember to also take out the vacuum hoses. So just kind of push this one out, and there's another one here, push this one out, and the vacuum hoses come through to the back, and there's like a bracket that holds on to them, so you can kind of push them out too. And then that basically encompasses all the wiring and stuff like that for the transfer case. And then you can easily get it down. So once you get this guy, all the bolts out, you know, the ones on the side, the ones on the side, and the ones in the back, right? It's easy enough. It should be easy enough that you can push it out from the car, because it kind of just slips out. There's no fluid in here or anything. If it's not, then you really have to double check all your bolts, because you might have missed one or something like that. So you should be able to slip it out. Anyways, so how do you get it out of the vehicle once it slips out? So once it slips out, you should, you know, here's the other half of it. It should end up around here. You should have this much space in between the one, once it slips back out, and the actual transmission drive shaft. So what you want to do is kind of get this guy right here over the gas tank, and then have it kind of sitting like this towards the car. So here's the driver's side. So once you get this part of it over the gas tank by going to, I don't know, the driver's side, towards the driver's side, and get it over the gas tank, you can lower it using that transmission lift thingy, and then it will come right out, and you can kind of wiggle it out. So in getting it back in, you kind of just, you have to go from, here's the driver's side, and it has to be in this direction. So you kind of go underneath and then lift it up, and then get this portion over the gas tank, and I'll show you right now. So you kind of want to come into here sideways, get it underneath, and then you have to lift that lift this section over here over this part of the gas tank right over here, kind of lift it over, and then it'll go into this direction, and then you kind of have to shove it in. And shoving it in is it's like a, I guess, a art form, because so the thing about installing it is when you shove it in, you kind of have to slip it in here, and you can't see it, maybe there's too much shade, but anyways, there's a bunch of teeth in there, and what you want to do is you kind of slip them drive shaft in through here, and then you kind of have to, every time you want to kind of turn it around, just play with the front drive shaft right here, and then you can kind of turn it and turn it and turn it until you get lucky, and then it's kind of slips in among the many teeth. And that's where I'm at right now. After you, and then you it slips in enough that you can start putting in bolts, and then you kind of want to make sure when you put in the bolts, you adjust it and so it goes in as smooth and as aligned as possible. And then because they're held on by these dowels, so once you have aligned them with the dowels, so these like things that protrude from the other side of it, that slides into these kind of holes, once you align those, you can kind of just slowly work your way around, and then get this transfer case to mate with the transmission slowly. And once you have that mated, just work yourself backwards with the oh, actually, before you put it back, make sure you clip this one on, because that was the last electrical clip that you clipped on. So put this one back, then kind of go ahead and start working on the bolts. And then that's where I'm at right now, where I finished working on the bolts slowly, and then I made it already. So the last one you probably want to do is this guy right here, because all the other ones, they're pretty easy to get to. This guy requires you to use a very small, because it's hard to get a wrench in here because there's just not enough room. So you probably want to get like a like the really small wrench, really small version of this, and then get it in there with the swivel head or something, and then use that to put it in there, or get a stubby wrench or whatever the case may be, and then get that guy in, and that will be your last piece. And then obviously hook onto your vacuum hoses back, and then put it here, and then the loom, put the rest of the electricals, clip these two on top, this guy over here, and then this guy over here, and then you can go ahead and put back the transmission support, and then from there you can put back the drive shafts and whatever the case may be. Whether you work on your U-joints and you took those out and put it back, I didn't. My U-joints were fine. To check for a U-joint replacement is when it's on the car, use like a pry bar and then kind of shake it around and see if these things are like loose or anything like that. If there's any play, basically something's wrong with the bushings on the U-joint, so you kind of get those replaced. So there's here's some. Obviously the front has some, and then the front drive shaft, and then let's see, what else do I have to do? Oh, should have said this in the beginning, but make sure you drain it of transfer case fluid so you minimize the spillage. There's still quite a bit of fluid after you drain it, so you know, you probably want to get like cardboard underneath the car, and then so when you take out drive shafts, it doesn't leak from here. When you take this whole sucker out, it kind of just shifts around, so it'll probably leak a little bit more. Whatever, you should be able to find videos on that, no problem. I just didn't find any videos about taking this out, and I'm sorry that I couldn't really, you know, get you through this by showing you, mostly because it's you know, I'm just doing it by myself, so it's really hard to use a camera and then do this. But I felt it was necessary for someone to see some of the things, and then maybe talk you through the process, so to let you know if this is something you guys want to take on, or whatever the case may be. Obviously be very careful. I know I have a strap that I put underneath, and I strapped it between the two rails, and then so it kind of prevents it from like going all the way down, just in case it drops on me. And then again, the transmission lift was super necessary for me, from Harbor Freight, the 800-pound one. It's low enough that you can do it for home, and it gets high enough that you can roughly, you know, use it to get it back into the car. I did play with the height of the car, just depending on what I need it for. So in order to remove it and put it back in, you kind of wanted the car a little bit lower in order to get the transmission kind of as straight as possible when it goes back into the transfer case, as straight as possible when it goes back into the transmission. But when you're taking bolts or putting it back on bolts, you kind of want to get it as high as possible so you can have enough of the room underneath. I should have mentioned this first, but obviously disconnect the battery, right? When the transmission is kind of down, look at your engine bay and make sure that your fan isn't hitting your because the whole engine's kind of tilting backwards, so you know, the likely contact point is the front fan that kind of goes back. So disconnect the battery before you start on anything, because it's electrical, and then you can start working on it. I hope it helps, you know, letting you decide if this is something you want to do. You know, these things are everywhere on eBay, just in case you need to replace them or fix them or whatever. So I got my part on basically doing my research on eBay, and then seeing where my local I guess secondhand shop is for used parts, and go there and pick it up. And then it was $300 for a Armada 2011. My car is Nissan 2008 Pathfinder, but the 2011 Armada had the same exact part. It has less than 100,000 miles, so you know, it was quite expensive at $260, but obviously that's way cheaper than the dealer. And so I got that thing local pickup, so I don't have to pay for shipping. But if you don't live in close to one of those places, then you kind of have to find it on eBay, and then, you know, have it shipped to you. The place I got it was LKQ, I don't know, LKQ Liquidation Automotive Parts or something like that. I don't know. You can find it, you know, just look for one. But anyways, I hope that helps. Let me know if it does. Obviously be very careful when you do this. These are all super heavy. I would say this guy's like maybe 150 pounds ish, around there, or 120 pounds, 120, 150, around there. So it's not, if it comes down, it's going to come down hard. So that's why you should use the transmission jack of some sort, and then use, you know, a pretty stout strap. I think this one's rated for like 1,000 pounds or something, in order for, you know, to be safe and stuff like that. See what else. So I'm almost done with the putting it back. I don't assume there would be any issues me putting it back, or some tip that I need to give you than the ones I already gave you. So yeah, thank you, and I hope this helps. Again, this is another look at the transfer case. I think the thing that, you know, when I was doing my research, it was just, you know, you kind of have to piece it all together, and it would be nice if someone just told me what happened. So I guess this is what I'm doing. All right, thank you. Bye.